biggest challenge has to be the systems. That's what EOS really helped me with, was giving me an opportunity to start laying that foundation.
When you're hiring and firing people, you're trying to explain why this good person isn't working. And that's just a fallacy. It's not true. It just means that they're not the right fit for what you're looking how to do. Rolling out EOS is hard work. It's really hard work. You've got to have a level of stick-to-itiveness to say, all right, I'm going to give it a commitment, a mental commitment. But if you don't have the stick-to-itiveness, it's probably going to be a lot harder than it needs to be.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. I'm your host, Debra Chantry-Taylor, and I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs lead their ideal life by creating better businesses. Today's show is an interesting one. I have actually got two people on the show today, and so I have Laurie, who is an EOS implementer, and Curtis, who is one of her clients. And so Curtis has been on this EOS journey for around about 18 months. He was Laurie's first client. Curtis actually runs a gym that specializes in helping busy people get control of their health and fitness. And Laurie had moved recently to becoming an EOS implementer after running several businesses herself and being involved in helping other businesses. Today, they're going to share with us that journey they've been on together so that you'll see there's a real symbiotic relationship here in terms of Curtis has helped Laurie with her health and fitness, and Laurie has helped Curtis with his business. He's got big plans for the future. And they're going to share how they've worked together, what they've gained from that relationship, and the tips and tools around the EOS tools and model that they've used to actually help create that. So without any further ado, welcome to the show, Laurie and Curtis. Thank you for joining me on a Sunday evening over in the US while I'm here on Monday morning in Melbourne. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to sharing both of your stories because they're both quite interesting. And so we're going to start by introducing Laurie, if we may. So Laurie, you are an EOS implementer, but you haven't always been. So I'd love you to share the story of how you got to where you are now and why an EOS implementer.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I wasn't always an EOS implementer, and I actually have been an entrepreneur for about 21 years. And I came about being an entrepreneur by accident. I had worked through the corporate life for a while, and I grew up in competitive intelligence, strategic marketing, all kinds of fun things. Previous client had come, colleague actually, had come to me and said he needed a problem solved. So I hung out a shingle and started solving problems. And fast forward a couple of decades, and I was still helping teams figure out how to get through dysfunction, how to work through difficult times, really solving problems, and I was trying to grow my own practice. That is when I found traction. And it was super exciting for me because all of a sudden, all the tools I was trying to pull together on my own were right there, already well designed by Gino. And so I got super excited and I started trying to do it to myself, and it didn't work very well, as many self-implementers know. And at some point along the line, a friend of mine who is also a pilot became an implementer. I had no idea that was a thing. So in watching his journey, I realized that this almost felt like the most natural extension of what I had been doing all this time. So at that point in time, I went to boot camp and I learned why I was doing all the things wrong in my own self-implementation. And so at that point, I realized this really is just the most fun and the best time. And everything that I've been doing in my life seems to have rolled into EOS. And I'm just happy as a bug with all my clients doing EOS as much as I can.
Oh, that's fantastic. It is interesting how we all come on this journey, isn't it? And so Curtis is actually one of your clients. Is that right?
He is. And he has been on the EOS journey with me from day one, because Curtis is responsible for pulling me out of a really difficult time in my life and helping me get super healthy, which is what his business is all about, helping folks get really healthy and really strong. And we've just been, coaches coaching coaches, right?
And so, okay, so Curtis came along, he helped you get back onto the pathway of health and fitness. So Curtis, let's introduce you. Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what your business is and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm Curtis Williams, and I'm the owner of Lifetex Personal Training Studio, and it's at the center of Wayland, Massachusetts. And it's my first ever brick and mortar, which is really exciting and nerve-wracking all at the same time. But I have to say, so far, it's been an awesome journey. So what we do there is it is a personal training business. So when people think gyms, they think big box, they can just go and work out at any time. But in our studio, it's actually appointment based only. So they only work with a coach if they're going to be there. Otherwise, they're not showing up. So no open gym status. We do one-on-one personal training, which is what Laurie and I have done together. We do two-on-one, which is more of like a semi-private model. And then we do a small group training as well, which is up to 6 people per group.
Nice. Okay. And so obviously you helped out Laurie and then she suggested that maybe you might like to introduce EOS into your business. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, exactly. So I was always really good at being inserted into a structure and a system. And I thrived most places I worked as a coach. And then when the pandemic hit, I essentially was let go like literally everybody else. And I just don't know how to sit still. So I started actually offering some free Zoom classes for everybody, and people started showing up to those. And then eventually when people got comfortable, we started actually going to parks. And next thing I was doing things on my own and starting to get a little bit of financial security by myself rather than being tied to another location. And so when my job was back on the table, I didn't go back. But to tie that all in, I was really good in the system when I was at the other gyms. And then when I was on my own, I realized, oh man, like this is the part that I'm not good at. I'm great with people. I'm good with communicating, but I'm not that great at like building the systems from scratch. And so EOS kind of put that together for me, helped me get a little bit more structure, helped me find my footing a little bit so I could walk in well, I almost said a straight path, but we all know it's not completely straight. Walk in the direction that was going to put me in a better position.
Okay, fantastic. And so take me a little bit on that journey a little bit. Tell me how it started and what you got out of those sort of first few sessions with Laurie.
Yeah, so it all started mainly because Laurie came in one day and she was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I think it'd be really cool. And we've talked about you needing a little bit of structure and whatnot before. And I feel like I can help bring that to the table for you. And so me trusting Laurie as much as I do, I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot and we'll see how it goes. So we sat in on our first couple sessions, and right away I knew that the organization piece is what I needed, and seeing how everything was really kind of laid out. We had structure, we had the guidance and direction I needed. I knew it was going to be the right transition for me, someone keeping me accountable and someone holding me to the goals and the things that I want to accomplish, but in a way that's going to make sure that we keep moving the needle forward. So those first couple sessions were me not knowing what to expect exactly, but getting my feet wet. And then once we started getting some traction and seeing that kind of snowball effect, I really I bought all the way in. And Laurie will tell you, some of these appointments, they're long appointments and I do not sit still well. So I might be sitting on her couch or sitting upside down. I don't know, doing all these funny things, but the organization of what we're doing is really like brought me under control a little bit to do the right things for the business and keep moving the needle forward.
Yeah. I have pictures of Curtis spinning around in the chair in the conference room. I have him strut. We did that. We did his annual in my upstairs library at my home, and he was on the couch, on the floor, just all over the library. And I think you said you want all the sessions in the library now. Is that what you want?
It's the most comfortable place for me, I'd say so.
He does not sit still. That is a true fact.
So I want to ask a question because a personal training business, I would have thought that people would say, oh, but that's not a normal business and EOS won't work in that kind of business. I often hear that from people who are thinking about EOS as, oh, yeah, but it's not our type of business. What's your experience in terms of EOS in the personal training business?
Well, I think it's great so far. I'll go out on a limb and say the level 10 meetings have been a game changer, right? Those are just, having a schedule, knowing how long we're supposed to stick to the subject, moving on to the next thing. Creating that schedule has made our meetings far more efficient. It's given my coach an opportunity to gain a little bit of confidence, a little like she's growing in this field as well. She's new in this field, but she's much more organized than me. I would like to say type A. And so it complements us really well, but it gives her an opportunity to step into, I don't want to say authoritative because that sounds almost negative, but more of a role of authority, and giving her the power to lead that meeting and keeping me on track so we stay focused in the direction that we need to go. But the level 10s have been awesome. I would argue since we implemented those, we have cruised through our issues list and we've just checked things off and faster than we've ever done before.
Yeah. I mean, they really are a game changer. And it's always really funny because when you say it's the same agenda, it's the same day, same time, etc., start time and time, people are going to go, how can it be the same agenda when one person's running a personal training business, another person's running a metal recycling business, the next person's running an IT or an advertising agency? But yet it is just a framework at the end of the day. And so it is designed to just give you some boundaries so we don't get distracted and go off on different tangents, right?
100%. And that's literally my Achilles heel. So having those borders for me is perfect because then I can really hone in on the task at hand and actually tackle those things when the opportunity arises in the meeting itself. And I don't spend the first 30 minutes talking about who knows what.
Yeah. Perfect. And it sounds like you've had a very strong vision for the business pretty much since you started. What are the tools within EOS that has helped you bring that to life, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so far, I will say again, the level 10 has been the big thing, but I will say every time we do our quarterlies, the bigger meetings that are going to take 1 to 2 days, that our company is a little bit smaller, so it doesn't usually take as long as I think that they're supposed to take. But I will say every time we do those bigger meetings and we bring the vision to life and we really dive into all the nooks and crannies of where we might have holes in the bucket in the business and how we could plug those holes, who is responsible for what role. Those things are really helping us move the needle forward in a very big way. For example, we started this year, no paid marketing, no advertising or anything like that, but just very specific action items and things to tackle. And we were able to add, just in Q2, 19 new clients based off referral and word of mouth, directly related to strategic strategies that we came up with in our meetings, what we were going to tackle and what things were most important. And I will say that those meetings are also bringing other things to light that I wouldn't have thought about, like joining the Chamber of Commerce. Wasn't on like my radar, but that's something that I am doing. And currently I just connected with the gentleman last week and we're getting that ball rolling, which is awesome because we had big goals for our grand opening and they're going to help us with that. Essentially being able to line those things up and really know, okay, what is the most important? What takes priority? What things can be pushed off a little bit? Like, yes, they're important. They're on the list, but they're something we can tackle in the quarter. Doesn't have to be next week. Those things have really helped us stay focused on what's important today, right now.
I love it. And Laurie, tell me a little bit about your journey as the EOS implementer working with Curtis. How do you keep somebody who is obviously very physically active and maybe not quite so good at sitting still, shall we say? How have you managed to work with that? And what would be some tips and things for other people who are listening and are kind of going, oh my goodness, the thought of spending an entire day in a session room, it just does my head in.
Yeah, it can be hard. Not everybody can sit still for long periods of time. So for me, what's been important is always letting people move. When I'm thinking, I need to move, right? When I'm really thinking hard, I need to walk. Sometimes I pace. Letting people know that's okay in a session room, right? If you're going to spend all day together and you need to sit upside down in a chair to have a thought, like sit upside down in a chair as long as you maintain a little bit of decorum. Right. But what is important is that you are able to think, you're able to dialogue, you're able to engage in the conversation, you're able to really focus on digging into the meaty issues, digging into some of the tension that sometimes is in the room between team members. You want to make sure that you're able to give that your best. And if that means you got to get up and have a stretch and get a soda or get a water, like Curtis and I don't drink soda, so it's not a soda. Right? Get a water, get a tea, right? Get something that, helps you not just like feel stuck. That's so very important for the session to be very successful.
Yeah, I like that. So any clients listening in, feel free to hang upside down on chairs in my session room if that's what works for you. Because it is absolutely about what works. And it is important that we make the most out of that time together in those quarterly sessions.
Yeah, if I could interject for a second, I will say Laurie's done a good job of meeting me where I am, but also holding me accountable and calling me on my BS when it's needed. Oh, it's been very good.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to the original conversation we were having offline or even online, but about self-implementing. It's like the self-implementation, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic. And I would much rather somebody did that than did nothing. But at the same time, when I have a personal trainer as well. And the reason I do that is because I actually don't really like the gym, if I'm really honest. I love walking, I love hiking, I love cycling, I love being outdoors, but being in a gym, it's not really my cup of tea. And so the only way I could actually make sure that I turned up was to have a personal trainer and make sure that they were actually holding me accountable and all those things. And that's the same with EOS too, right? It's like you can self-implement, but there's a couple of things that could potentially happen. First of all, you may not use the tools in the right way. The amount of times I've seen self-implementers completely negate the accountability chart and just focus on level 10s and things. Yeah. Yep. Or they're using the tool and they think they're doing a level 10, but it's actually just their own version of a level 10. It doesn't have the same impact and whatnot. And so the idea of having a personal trainer or an EOS implementer is to actually have somebody who's there making sure that you're doing it right, challenging you, because I can be such a wuss. It's like, oh, I don't want to do any more weights. It's like, come on, you can do some more. And that's the point of it, right?
Oh, yeah. Curtis is constantly telling me that I'm stronger than I think I am.
Yes, yes. Actually, it would be interesting to explore that for a moment. So there's been a reciprocal relationship here, which is fantastic. And obviously, Curtis has helped you come from what sounded like a pretty bad space to where you are now. So we'd like to share a little bit of that, because I think there's some real synergies there between a personal trainer and an EOS implementer.
Absolutely. So when I met Curtis, and Curtis came as a referral through two friends that I know, I was at a tough part of my life, and I was just really not very happy. It's hard to say if I was depressed, like I don't really know if I was or not, but I didn't want to get off the couch. And I knew I was getting weaker and I wasn't getting any stronger. And I was pretty unhappy. So I knew that if I didn't find somebody that I could work with, I do best when I'm showing up for somebody else. That has always, like, if I go to a group class, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't. But if I've made an appointment with another human being, my butt will move. So when I met Curtis, the wonderful thing about Curtis is that I am not somebody who likes to be yelled at. And anyone who knows me will just completely fall out of their chair when they hear me say that. And I would not do well with the type of personal trainer who just barks at you all the time. And much like Curtis says, I met him where he met me where I was. And if all I could do that day is show up and talk to him and pick a few things up and put them down, he accepted that. And that was one of the most valuable things for where I was emotionally, where I was mentally. And over time, as I got better and stronger and the things that were really bothering me physically were getting fixed, I'm now pushing, a little bit stronger and a little bit further. And Curtis is teaching me how to do Olympic lifting and things that I never would have thought of doing on my own had it not been Curtis saying, hey, you can do this. Hey, you're stronger than you think. Hey, you should pick up a little more. Hey, why don't you move a little faster? Without any judgment or yelling or guilt, just always these wonderful, beautiful conversations that kept leading to better and stronger.
I love it. And again, some synergies there. I can feel the love in the room. It's fantastic. And again, there's synergies there between sort of, being so EOS and having somebody help you with EOS and having somebody help you in the gym. It's like having a person who's the right fit, I suppose. It really is about having that right person that's going to go on that journey with you. Cool. So I want to explore a little bit more of some of the EOS tools. So we've talked about the level 10 meeting. We've talked about the accountability chart briefly. The process component is one that I think a lot of visionaries think that they're going to struggle with, because we think as visionaries that we're not really process driven. Actually, we are, because we created an entire business based on a process that made us a little bit unique. But can you tell me a little bit about how you've done with that process component and what difference that has made in the business?
I'd say for me, I definitely felt that way in the beginning, as far as like, yeah, is this really going to work for us? Is it something that I think I can do? Just for the simple fact that as I didn't even realize I was a visionary, to be completely honest. It was one of those things where I did have a vision. I did have big goals, but I just didn't have the organization and the structure that the process brings. And so for me, it took a little bit of getting in the flow to feel comfortable and feel like, okay, there's something here. There's something I can gain from this. And it was just a matter of, I like to push myself out of my comfort zone and try things, whether I think they're going to work or not going to work. At least I have the knowledge to say, well, I tried it and it wasn't for me, or, hey, there was a gem here or something that I didn't see coming. So when I was able to step into the process, it made it so like my vision had directions, if you will. So I was no longer just guessing week to week, like, what I think's going to work here, what's going to be the next step, or jumping from this thing to this thing. Is very much put me in a position where I could say, okay, we've got a plan. This plan's going to last, 3 months, a quarter, whatever it's going to be. And as long as I execute on this plan and I follow the process the way that we kind of laid out, with obviously taking a detour here and there, if something pops up and we see the need to do that, it made it a lot easier for me to, again, see some success and see that, like I had mentioned, the clients we gained off of just referrals and no paid marketing was a perfect example of the process working the way that we anticipated it when we sat down and we laid everything out.
Laurie, do you want to add to what you've seen with Curtis through this process?
So in the process component, what Curtis has really been focusing on is really getting refined around his systems internally. And as a personal trainer, he both leverages EOS, but he also leverages some of the more industry custom processes and systems that can come already packaged for him. So EOS gives him really a framework, as we've used that word before, but gives him a framework to both use things that are more industry custom to him and bring them into what he's doing with EOS, and also has a place for all of the processes that he develops in himself, like by himself with his team, right? In order to ensure that those are all documented and followed the same way. And I know watching them develop their systems, they are extremely rigorous to make sure that they're doing the same thing every time and getting everything sort of checked off. Hopefully that helps.
So Curtis, so tell me from your employees' point of view or your team's point of view, what would they say has been the biggest difference since you started using EOS, do you think?
I would have to say biggest difference, this particular person I'm thinking about is not usually comfortable with change, likes status quo, likes doing things the way that we've historically done them. So getting into it was an uncomfortable process, right? So we had to build some trust there, if you will, right? And then once we got that rolling, I would say putting her in a position to feel like she has some say, that she has some processes and some systems to really keep track of and keep organized, and giving her more of a voice. I would say that's probably the biggest thing that, if I were to put words in her mouth, I think that's what she would say. She has more of a voice. She feels more like comfortable and confident with her opinions, with her ideas, weighing in, and then keeping everything structured and organized. We just brought on another team member and we're looking to bring on a fourth. And with that being said, she is stepping into the role of truly being an integrator now, where people are reporting up to her. And I can see that building more confidence. I can see that building more resilience in helping her level up as a whole. So I think giving her that has probably been the most impactful thing that we've seen come out of EOS so far.
Yeah. And I think this is really important, isn't it? Because whilst we always say that EOS generally is for sort of the larger businesses, if you're working with an implementer, the actual framework, the model, everything works, even when it's only one of you. Because it gives you, and what it does is it builds those beautiful foundations so that as the business grows, you're growing a business that will be sustainable, will be scalable, will be, I say scalable, and I don't mean in order to sell it, but it means that it's actually able to operate without relying on one person.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I thought was very important. I tend to look pretty far ahead, and I like to get in front of issues. And I think that's exactly what EOS is doing for us. It's giving us the tools to make sure that we get in front of most of the problems that we might run into had we not planned accordingly.
I'm interested actually now in terms of scorecards. So in a gym environment, what are the things that you're actually measuring in your weekly level 10 meetings?
Yeah, so scorecard it's mainly going to be total number of clients is like one of our biggest, total revenue is definitely one of our biggest, but we're paying attention to the leads that are coming in, which leads are actually scheduling calls with us, which leads are converting into paid trials. So we do 3, 6, or 12-month commitments long term, but we'll start with a paid trial week. So you get 1 week where you can actually get a little bit more information so you can make an educated decision. So essentially, which leads will convert into that paid trial, which paid trials are converting into actual long-term clients. We're checking our churn and things of that nature. But so far, I would say the scorecard structure has actually really helped with getting some more clarity on the numbers on a weekly and monthly basis.
Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? Because it's difficult to get a scorecard working immediately, and it does take a bit of time to find the right numbers. But once you have them, they really do become, the levers then to push and pull to get things working, don't you?
Absolutely. And I would say I definitely struggled with the scorecard at first, mainly because I didn't just update it right away. And then as soon as the end of the week would come, I'd be trying to remember every single thing and what day someone did this. And the frustration of like not being exact, if it's not exact for me, I don't want to do it. So the frustration of not being exact like threw me off. But then once I got in the flow and I was updating it on a consistent basis, I was like, hey, this is gold. It's perfect. And it's really helped us with clarity.
Yeah. I think clarity, and also it gets you really focused on things before they become issues. So you're not sort of suddenly in the shit hits the fan. It's like, oh shit, it's like, actually we saw that coming. So that's great.
Totally.
Okay. And so biggest challenge that you've had in starting up the business, getting it to where it is now, and how did you overcome that?
Biggest challenge has to be the systems. Has to be. Like I could have done totally fine by myself. I could have set up something in my garage, put down some flooring and called it a day and not had to try to build a team. And between arguably building a team and systems, I would say go hand in hand, because building a team is easily one of my biggest challenges that I'm coming across. Luckily, I have one employee right now who's a gem. And then as we go forward, hopefully our newest employee and this potential hire are also gems. But the systems, I think, are the thing that gave me the biggest problem as I transitioned here, because I know how to do everything in my head. I know exactly what I plan to do, what my best practices are, but really bringing them to life and making sure that everybody is doing that. Everybody is following the system. And no matter what, at LifeTex, we have a very specific structure, like organization to the structure of how things are accomplished. That was much harder for me because I didn't even know necessarily where to start. And so that's what EOS really helped me with, was giving me an opportunity to start laying that foundation. And then just like Laurie said, I've had a few opportunities within my industry to get connected with some people who are a little bit more like gym, personal training studio specific. So I've been able to take the information they're giving, put it into our EOS structure and really make some magic happen. And that's been probably the biggest challenge, but also the biggest game changer as we've cleaned that up a little bit.
Lovely. I love it. Okay. And so if somebody's sitting here listening to this right now, and they're a smallish kind of business owner who's got an idea, what would be the 3 top tips or tools that you might give them to get them to help them on their journey?
Okay. So the first thing is, if you're thinking about it, you should do it. I personally think you should take action, because the one thing I will say is I took a long time to take action on this plan, and nothing good came from me taking longer, other than I will say, obviously, I had more experience, more years of experience as a trainer, right? So I was close to a decade of training before I actually pulled the trigger. That obviously is helpful, makes me more personable, makes me have the skill set that I need to really be able to function and operate at a high level within my business. So that was important. But everything else is like waiting is just going to slow you down. It's going to shoot you in the foot. So the reason I say to take the action is simply because you don't know what you don't know until you're in it. I had no idea the problems I was going to run into, the challenges I was going to face, and I wouldn't have been able to figure out how to overcome them and how to become a better studio owner without actually facing these problems. So that's why I think taking the step is one of the most important things, because that's how you're going to learn and that's how you're going to grow. I would also say, of course, think it through, be careful, come up with a decent plan. Don't just like jump in with nothing. But I do think action is important, because the more I sit on things and the longer I take, it doesn't do anything good for me. Number 2, the other thing that I would probably say is anticipate more challenges than you would expect, right? So if you think, okay, this is going to be hard, I would double that or quadruple that, right? Like would say, okay, so just to give you a little bit more background, tiny bit more. We opened the gym on September 1st of 2023. We bought my house in the same town on September 1st of 2023, and we had a baby on November 20th of 2023. So I always told myself, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. Doesn't really feel like I've gotten through yet, because as we continue to grow, there's more and more challenges. So that's why I say plan for more hardships than you think, because if you plan ahead for it, then when it does come and punch you, right? Like you'll be ready to take a couple and stay on your feet and keep going.
I think that's actually a very realistic way of looking at things too. I think that I always say that you should always have plan Bs. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do it, but if you know what the worst looks like, then you're more prepared to deal with it than if it suddenly hits you out of the blue. And I think the whole checking back in every 90 days is absolutely key in terms of when you're growing a business and it's growing fast. You need to continuously refine what the next thing is and learn from that previous 90 days. And often when people are trying to set up a business and they're trying to grow it, they're so engrossed in the doing and inside the business that they're not taking the time out to go, right, what do we need to do to make this move forward? You're laughing, Laurie. You've obviously got some stories behind that. Tell us about that.
I think just about every quarter I get do we have to? Yes, you do. After the quarter, wow, that was great. We needed to do that. Yes, I know. Almost every single time.
Yes, I have it the same. I've got clients. Yeah, I've got clients who are exactly the same. And I think it's sort of because within that break of that 90 days when they're away, they're very much working in the business, trying to get things done. And they see the stuff happening, but they don't appreciate that how important it is to take a step back. I mean, we talk about clarity breaks, which we recommend doing regularly, but even that taking that one day out every 90 days has huge impact on the way that the business moves forward.
Absolutely. I have one more, I think. I was actually thinking about it because I was going back and forth between a couple, but I would argue this third one would be exactly what you mentioned about working in the business versus on the business. Really understanding I'm someone who definitely does both. I work in the business quite a lot to the point where it slows me down working on the business sometimes. And I'm in the process of really balancing that out a bit. And what I would say for anybody looking to, if it's my field, then this is a little bit more directly related, maybe a different field, slightly different, but ultimately make sure that balance is there. And more than anything, as an owner, it's really your responsibility to pay attention to working on the business as much as possible, because in the business really doesn't move the needle and it doesn't help anybody that you're looking to bring with you and help grow. A big part of why I opened this gym was because I wanted to take care of other coaches as well as build something special in my community. But I spent a lot of years not making enough money to really survive the way I wanted to. And so once I figured it out and I cracked the code a little bit, I wanted other coaches to experience the same. But if I stay working in the business, I don't have the opportunity to really do that. I can't really grow my team because I just don't have the bandwidth and the time to really execute on the things that need to be done so we can see the needle move and we can get everyone where they need to be.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's really key. You have to work on the business. But also what was interesting then was you spoke about the fact that you got quite a strong niche in terms of you're very clear about that ideal client that you want to work with. So that's obviously part of the VTO. It's part of the defining who we are. Okay, well, I'm going to just take you a step backwards. So tell me a little bit about how did you decide where you wanted to be working and how did you come up with that ideal client?
I would say a lot of trial and error, mainly like I've always worked with general population. So I've been with everyone from, I think my youngest client, I'm not even kidding, was like 6 years old. Yeah. And then my oldest client was 81. And so I've worked with a large number of people, different personalities and so on. And what helped me narrow it down was simply who I felt like needed the most help and who we connected best with. And so that's how we figured out like, okay, I think in this environment where we are, these are the people who are really looking to take their health back, to regain some confidence, to be able to lead from the front in their families and really not just take care of their family, but take care of themselves at the same time. So we really focus on busy parents, working professionals. It's become our niche mainly for a lot of different reasons, but because of just where we've ended up this whole time, right? The path we went on, we figured out that those are the people we connect with the best. And we have the most opportunity to make a really big difference for them in their lives.
Yeah. And I think it's Jim Collins that says that you'll never die of starvation. There's always plenty of opportunities out there. And the clearer you can get about who it is that you actually want to target, the better the entire business becomes, because you are very focused on that ideal client and how to look after them.
Absolutely.
Cool. Laurie, I'm going to ask you the same question because I think it's beautiful to get tips and pointers. You're not just an EOS implementer. Obviously, you run your own businesses. You do a whole range of things. What would be your 3 top tips or tools for somebody listening in based on having worked with Curtis and the work that you've done with him, I suppose?
It's hard not to want to bump that L10 up to the top, but really what's in that L10 to me is what the magic is, which is the issue solving track, right? When you get really good at the root cause analysis in that issue solving track, to me, that's a big piece of why that L10 is so different from so many other meeting agendas. You get really good at figuring out not just what's really at the root cause of the issue to make it go away forever, but more importantly, you're blocking all of your issues together. And so you're not spending time scattered focusing on whatever comes up in the moment. You're collecting them together and then you're prioritizing them in the most important ones on top so that you're spending all of your time on the most critical issues. And for my own business, when I shifted over to running my business on EOS as well, that was getting really good at solving issues was, to use a pun, it was rocket fuel. It was really pouring gasoline on the fire, getting all of that figured out. And now that my team is also trained in it, we can bang out 15, 20 issues in 45 minutes, right? We all set them up, we knock them out, we get them done. It's just astonishing. So my first tip would be get really good at knowing what your issues are, knowing how to find the true root cause that'll make it go away forever, and also get very good at prioritizing which ones you should be spending time on and not on putting the others to a side or killing them altogether.
Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? Because as humans, I've seen it even with people who've been trained on how to do level 10 and they get their issues and they still go for the top one. It's like the top one may not be the most important thing. It's really important you spend the time to prioritize. And as you said, some issues just disappear over time because they really weren't that important. So yeah, the issue solving track is definitely a tool that can help with that. And it's really important when you get that nailed, it does make a significant difference.
Yep. And then you said, so 3, so number 2. Number 2 for me would be vision building, right? The core values piece of the vision building. And namely because my first mistake when I tried to self-implement was I went right after the people analyzer. I had made some poor hiring choices. They weren't bad people, but they weren't the right fit. And I didn't have language for that. And I didn't know how to fix that. And I struggled with it. So I'm going through and I'm like, oh, people analyzer, perfect. And I would grab it and I'm like, well, now what? Well, I know that they're not doing, but how do I do that? And I had no idea how to run a core values exercise, right? When I was trying to figure it out on my own. And if you can really dig in and you can take the time and read the articles and go through everything that EOS provides, if you're doing this on your own, if you're not working with an implementer, you can do that value exercise and figure out what those are. Because if you don't have that, then trying to figure out who you want to hire is just a finger in the wind. Am I going to get it right? I don't know. Spaghetti against the wall, like pick your metaphor. And for me, that like really getting clear on my values was what kind of helped untangle a lot of the problems that I was struggling with.
And I think you make a really valid point. It's like if you've got the core values, you can obviously make decisions about who you employ. And just because somebody doesn't share your core values does not mean they're not a good person. It just means they're not the right fit for your organization. But you need to have an understanding of, again, what those boundaries are and what you want and what you need for you to make that decision about whether or not they're the right person.
Yeah, it was truly empowering for me when I started, like when I went to boot camp and as I began teaching EOS, to really be able to embrace the language that they're just not a right fit. It doesn't make them a bad person. And even though I don't know why you would ever think that, when you're hiring and firing people, you're trying to explain why this good person isn't working. And your brain wants to say, well, they're not working. There must be something wrong with them. And that's just a fallacy. It's not true. It just means that they're not the right fit for what you're looking how to do. And by releasing them to go find something else, you're giving them the opportunity to find a fit that they're better for, right? That where they will thrive instead of the two of you struggling with one another.
I've had so many examples of companies where they've let somebody go, and at the time it's really hard, right? Because letting anybody go is always hard. But then the person has come back to them years later and said that was like the best thing that ever happened. Because if you're feeling like they're not a fit, if they're feeling like a square peg in a round hole, then they're also feeling like a square peg in a round hole. And so for them to suddenly go and find a square hole, they're suddenly in their element and loving what they're doing.
And in some cases, just going through the process of EOS, I've seen in some of my other clients that as EOS gets rolled out, the individuals suddenly realize that they're not a fit. And they actually have more knowledge about what fit means to them. And so oftentimes that it does create sometimes a little unexpected turnover in a company, because suddenly just the process of learning more about what right seat means, what right fit means, then people suddenly have epiphanies that is like, oh my gosh, I want to go do this over here. I'm sorry, I love you guys, but like this is not a good fit, right? And I've seen that happen with other I haven't seen that with Curtis actually because his folks have stuck around, but I have seen it with other clients. Yeah, they're awesome.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, third and final tip from you, Laurie.
Third and final tip. This is about stick-to-itness. I think what you need to do is make a decision and stay after it, right? It's the discipline and the accountability piece. We talk about accountability in EOS. We talk about the accountability chart, which enables us to drive discipline. But what we often don't talk about, we do a little bit at the beginning when we do the 90-minute meeting, but rolling out EOS is hard work. It's really hard work. You're asking your people to think differently. You're asking them to learn new skills. If you try it on for 6 months, it's not going to work. You've got to have a level of stick-to-itness to say, all right, I'm going to give it a commitment, a mental commitment, right? As we say, of 24 months. And I'm going to commit to learning. I'm going to commit to trying to do different things. I'm going to commit to trusting the process and trying to figure it out. But if you say all of that and you don't have the stick-to-itness, it's probably going to be a lot harder than it needs to be. So that would be tip number 3 is just stick with it and ride it out.
And look, let's be fair, you can often see results within 3 to 6 months. It's not as if nothing happens in that time. I mean, usually after the first 90 days, things happen, but you're right. It's not, I would say it's simple, but it's not easy. EOS is definitely simple, but it's not easy. I'd love to hear it. So, Curtis, from your point of view, I mean, you're going through this. What would you say to that?
I'm going to have to say, I 100% agree. It is not easy at all. Given being someone who bounces around a lot, being able to stick to it, for lack of a better, I'm the squirrel. Exactly. Right. Being able to stick to it, for lack of a better phrase, is exactly right. And when you do it, though, it's a game changer. It does allow for some really awesome magic to happen.
Fantastic. And I can see magic's been happening in your business. So tell us, to finish off, where are you going to be in 10 years' time, Curtis?
Well, the first immediate plan is to open a studio in Florida and then open another one in our hometown. And then ideally, we'll have a couple more shortly after that. I feel like once we get the playbook really written out and we know exactly how we're going to approach each one, we really just have to hit a certain revenue level in this one for 3 to 6 months to then to say, hey, we can go replicate this in the next location. So, and I have some other big plans, but I won't go on too much of a tangent since she pulled out the squirrel on me.
Love it. Oh, that sounds really great. Look, I'm really honored to have been able to speak to you and learn about your journey. I'm really excited for what is coming up. I love the fact that EOS just gives you that clarity and then the confidence to actually achieve that. So I wish you all the best on that journey. Laurie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show too. I can see you're doing great work with Curtis and with other clients. We're going to make sure that all of the information for Laurie and Curtis are in the show notes. So if you want to speak to Laurie about EOS implementation or even just get a sense of self-implementing versus you as an implementer, you can absolutely get in contact with her. And if you are a person who is requiring some help with your personal fitness and really getting things back on track, it sounds like Curtis is the man to talk to. Thank you both for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, it's been awesome, and we really appreciate the invitation.
I second that.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.